Hey everybody, it's the Wild Snapper here. So, every time you turn on the television and watch the news, you usually hear about the big bad scary ghost gun. Well, what about a gun with a ghost? Do you believe in ghosts? Me? I don't know, but there have been a lot of strange occurrences that's happened in the past. So, let's get into that. Okay, everybody. So, if you see in front of you, this is kind of the only way I could figure out to make this video is put this image out in front of you and we'll talk and I'll tell you the stories. And if you stick around to the end, um, I will tell you a story about something that happened to me since we're on the paranormal side of things. Something that shouldn't exist. And God, I pray it doesn't exist. And that the four of us that were there that day and we all four saw the same thing. Um, we all pray it doesn't exist, and the fact that hope it was something that was not what we saw. Um, so let's get into the ghosts on the guns. Well, if any of you guys have seen my channel a little bit, you'll know that the gun you're looking at right now, that Single Action Army, was in a shootout about 100 years ago. And I don't believe that that has to do with anything on the things that we're having, the problems we're having. And I believe it's this gun because these things happen when the gun kind of showed up. And it's nothing crazy scary anyways. But just one of those things that was weird. This year on my son's birthday, we had family down, my mother-in-law and my brother. And I was cooking in our backyard on our barbecue. I had walked back inside, and at the time I did not know that my mother-in-law and my brother had left to the store. And when you're walking in from outside, to your right, we have our dining room. And if you kept walking straight, you would actually walk into where our living room is. My wife and my son were in our living room. And when I was walking in that direction, in the corner of my eye, I thought I saw my mother-in-law. And I basically had kind of said, "So what did you think about the burgers?" When I was walking by, wasn't looking. Just out of the corner of my eye, I'm still walking forward, waiting for that answer. And my wife kind of perked up a little bit and said, "Who are you talking to?" And I was like, "Your mother." And she's like, "She's not here." Kind of backing up and looking into the dining room, there's nobody there. But they were not there. They were actually at the store. So it was just me, my wife, and my son in the house. And I kind of looked around, knowing I probably wouldn't find anything. But that's not the only kind of crazy thing that's happened. One thing that has happened several times is if you're in my living room and you're sitting down watching television, if you looked up, you would actually see a walkway for our second floor, and there's a couple rooms up there. Well, there's three. There's our bedroom, and then once you leave our bedroom, the next door would be a room that I use quite a bit to work on my guns. It's a room that I just basically have my kind of stuff in. That it's not like a man cave, but it's where I do a lot of my working on hobbies, and it's got a bathroom up there that I clean my guns, all that kind of stuff. Well, normally at night, if somebody's downstairs playing video games on the television or watching television, it's not uncommon to see me walk from our bedroom, go into that room, and do stuff. And well, there's been several times where my wife has called me because she thought that I had walked from our bedroom into that room. And the main reason she called, because I never turned the lights on, she'd call out my name and nothing. So she just called my phone, and usually I'm either asleep in our bedroom or I'm in our bedroom watching YouTube or something in bed watching my phone. And that's actually happened several times. And what it is normally I usually just wear a robe 90% of the time I'm in my house, either a black one or a gray one. So if you saw something walking around at the top, especially normally, in a black robe or a gray robe, and if you're looking out of the corner of your eye, it's mostly black, and you would have figured that, hey, that's probably me. And it would go in there, but not turn the light on. And then that's happened a couple of times. The only other incident that I can think of, I'm hoping Garrett remembers this, because kind of freaked me out. I don't remember if I was on the phone with him or I just got off the phone with him or I just started a phone call. And I have things that, like sleep meds and whatnot on my nightstand. Excuse me, I wasn't in my bed. I was just chilling in my bed watching my phone, but I had that on my nightstand. And I was either on the phone with Garrett, I just called him, or I just got off the phone with him or whatnot. And I ended up telling him this happened. As I was sitting there, and one of my sleep meds just literally flew off my nightstand, kind of across the room. It actually kind of really, you think it would scare you, but it actually made me really mad. Now, this video that you're watching, I actually had filmed most of this last year, and I never got it released for Halloween. So the kind of the funny thing is, like, after my little rant of that, I actually haven't had any real problems. And the only time that I notice these kinds of things happen are when I've shot the Colt and I have had it apart and I haven't put it back together. Like one of those things where I take it apart and I brought it into that room, put it in the ultrasonic cleaner to clean it, and say half the gun, like the grips, the screws, whatever, is in one room and the other half of the gun is in another room. And every single time I've ever had that something happen in the house, it's always been that the gun is apart, not together. And, I haven't shot it too much, but I actually haven't had any issues since then. So it's been about a year almost, or coming up to a year, maybe-ish, that I haven't had any real issues of this happening again. So maybe it's gone away, or maybe there's a understanding of each other. I don't know. But yeah, and what truthfully is the reason why I think, or who is attached to this, if anything, the last owner died as a very old man, and he was very, very attached to the firearm. And all the times where you always see something out of the corner of your eye, it always seemed like an older person. So, and nothing scary. It's never been scary. It's been more, I don't know. I couldn't explain it, but it hasn't been that scary. So, that's the story of the Single Action Army and its problems it's given me. If you know anything like this that's ever happened, or anything like this ever happened to you, leave a comment. So for people who aren't too familiar with this channel, the Single Action Army is from 1882, and it was in one family from 1899 until I got it in 2020. And Garrett is from the 11 Bang Pang YouTube channel. Okay, so now let's get into the story of something that scared the living crap out of me when I saw it. I wasn't alone. There was multiple people who saw it, and there was actually evidence later on of something. So at this time, this would have been around July or early June of 2009. At this time, I was at a small fob or cop. It kind of was in between the two. And this small little fob was a place where I believe they used to store grain. It looks kind of like an airplane hangar, the way it was kind of set up. There was a bunch of these. They're really long, narrow, and they would have like a cement wall on one side, kind of boxing it in, except on, three sides are boxed in, concrete floor, and some of them had poles that would come up that would hold on a roof, and I believe they stored grain in them. And on each side of these, they would put these little, they look like office trailers, and each one of these office trailers would have 2 rooms in it. And usually, being the 2 rooms, was 2 people per room. And they were lined down the left and the right side of this long, setup. And right down the middle, there'd be a couple wooden buildings that were built. They look kind of like wooden, if you went to like Lowe's, you could buy the wooden sheds. That's kind of what they look like in a way. But, they had air conditioning, and in between those were shelters, basically. So if we get mortared, they were like a concrete U-shaped, almost like they'd use in tunnels, and they put sandbags all over them. So we'd go in there if we were getting mortared. And all of us lived in those little, down the sides of these. Now, there was a bunch of these things, and I'll try to inlay some pictures of the fob itself so you can get an idea of what it looks like. And I'll even I'll put a picture that I took the day after this incident happened that we actually submitted to the Army, actually, because it was actually a little bit of an incident report, because I'll get into it. But so we were walking back to this area that we lived in, from, I believe it was Chow. It was later in the day. Usually in summer, it shouldn't have been dark by then. We might have been doing something else, coming back from an MWR area there, or the gym. And it was a small place, but there was a lot of little areas you could go keep yourself entertained. We were walking back. It was me, my roommate, and then our first sergeant and another NCO. At the time, he was an E6, I believe, at that time. He made E7 a little bit later on. But we were walking back, and at night on this fob, we had zero light. If you were going to use light, it had to be red or blue. No white light. So we had light just because we usually get rocketed a lot or mortared a lot. So at night, having no light really helped. So we were walking back, and we just entered the area that we lived in. And once we entered this area, now imagine down the sides, there's those little trailers. Now they're off the ground a little bit, and then they have these HESCO barriers, which is like a wooden net, or excuse me, a metal net with this little fabric insert, and then they'd fill that with rocks. It was meant for if we got hit near mortars. It's like a giant sandbag, kind of. But underneath this, where the stairs were, it was actually off the ground, and there was space under there. When we were walking up, now we had a bunch of cats in this area. We weren't supposed to have animals or keep animals, but it never failed. There were cats. And one of these cats, he wasn't a kitten, but he wasn't a full-grown cat either. He was like, if you could put in a cat, he'd be like a teenage, almost full-grown cat. So he wasn't really little, but he wasn't a full, adult. And he was towards the middle. And in this picture I'll show you, he was right next to that air conditioning. And the cat is just freaking out. Like, hair on the back of its, is straight up, its tail's straight up, and it is freaking out. This cat is screaming. And we saw the cat first. We didn't see the other thing first. We saw the cat. We kind of looked at what the cat was looking at, and it was underneath the building a little bit. Now, at first, all we saw that looked like these two black, they're about 1 inch round poles. And they kind of bent in the middle, and they were kind of sticking straight up, and they would kind of curl, and then they would go straight. And they would curl, and then they would go straight. And it was one of those things, we're still getting a little bit closer, but we kind of had stopped. And right around the time it stopped, this thing starts stepping out from underneath this building. And it was a spider. And it was a very, very big spider. And right around this exact time, we kind of all went to white light, because you could just switch the little top of your flashlight if you just rolled it. Or some of us who had headlamps on, you could just flip it straight up. Because if you see a spider that you think is a body, not legs, body, about the size of a 2-liter bottle of soda, I'm not scared of getting mortared and attacked versus this spider. That scared the living crap out of me. I don't like spiders at all. Now, I know a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I've heard about big spiders in Iraq, right? They're talking about camel spiders. They don't get that big. I've never seen a massive one. If you look at all the pictures of them, they're either photoshopped, or it was just a weird angle that makes it look much bigger than it is. I'd never seen one bigger than like your normal sized tarantula. And this thing didn't look like a camel spider. Camel spider looks like a retarded scorpion mixed with a spider that didn't get the scariness of either, really. This thing looked like a wolf spider. And when I say wolf spider, it looked identical to a wolf spider. Except for it was all black. It had a little bit of fur, but it was mostly like a shiny skin to it. It didn't have like that hard shell that like you'd think like a black widow or whatnot. And it looked just like a wolf spider. And this spider attacks this cat. And this spider very quickly kills and runs off with this cat. And it ended up grabbing it and then running back underneath that trailer. When this stopped and it ran off, we basically all got together and said something. I mean, heck, our second in command, NCO, saw this with us. We looked for it, never found it. Now, like I said, there were walls all around this thing except for the front. And we're guessing it climbed over that wall, because we never found it, never saw it. And then the only way it could have left is it climbed over that wall or ran the other direction and left. But there were actually people further down there, so they would have probably seen this. Alright, so that's that part. Okay, fast forward about 3 days later. Never found this thing. We actually had to write a report on it. No joke. And it was about 3 days later. We had this large area that we'd throw our trash in. Our trash would be burned. The body of the cat was found. Well, it was left of the cat. And it kind of even cemented more the idea that this might have been a spider. Because when we found the cat, it was skin and fur and bone. There was nothing else. Like, there was no meat, nothing left. And that was the last thing we ever heard about it. And it was kind of strange because the Army actually took this pretty seriously. I've never seen the Army take anything seriously that would be, you know, that kind of cryptoid, you know, kind of thing. They think that you're crazy. And I don't know if it's because, you know, there's an E8 that saw it with us, or if they kind of knew about something like this. Now, since then, I've always looked for what was this thing really. Like, we saw it under white light, and at maximum, we were 6 feet away from it. And that was a maximum. And this thing was massive. And this whole event probably took place in about 15 to 20 seconds. And I know that sounds short, but stop for 15 and 20 seconds and look at something and tell me how well you can see it. We saw it very well. And to me, it looked just... We all had the exact same story. We all saw the same thing. And all of us said, you know, the site was right. As a matter of fact, the picture that was put up, this picture, was put up, and this picture was taken because of this incident, because it was right in front of this air conditioning. And that's kind of how we even helped estimate the size of this. And being that we even had to submit a report into the Army, kind of was strange as well, because like I said, they don't take this kind of stuff serious. But the only thing that I could think that this could have been, other than a spider, is maybe a coconut crab that was like emaciated and overly skinny. Because if you ever see pictures of those, they're massive. But it didn't look like a coconut crab. It looked more like a wolf spider. And to this day, I hope that's not what it was. It was just something else that we didn't know it. You know, like our eyes played tricks on us or something. But that cat was killed and drug off and eaten by whatever this thing was. Very strange. So, if you guys have any idea what it might have been, put it in the comment section. And that's it for this video, guys. I was supposed to have this kind of released last year, and I didn't. So, I'll see you guys in the next one.